Hey, how's everybody doing today? This is Patrick with Pomo FCC, where I attempt to do one Pomodoro of free code camp every day, hopefully. Today we should finish out CSS Grid, the last four challenges on CSS Grid. So then we're at the point where we're in responsive web design projects. And I always feel like we fly through the first part of FCC. I've done this before, and like the first part seems to go really quickly, and it seems like you can jump subjects pretty quickly. I mean, I'm on what, day 14, so it took about 2 weeks to get through free code camp, pretty much the front end stuff, for the most part. I mean, yeah, you still got other stuff you can go through, like frameworks and stuff like that, but to go through basic HTML, CSS, took what, 14 days. Today's day 14, I believe. 25 minutes a day. That's what, 7 hours total to get through everything, which isn't much. I mean, you could do that in one day. I can see you can knock out HTML, CSS, and Grid and Flexbox in one day. It seems to move along pretty quickly. I've said it before. I wish Free Code Camp would, add more intermediate little projects and stuff as you're going through this, with HTML and CSS, just to get a little bit more practice in before you move on to the next thing. But we're going to go ahead and start the timer here and finish out Flexbox, and then we're going to, just take a quick look at the tribute page, survey form, and all that. I'm not going to code that live while recording on 25 minutes because I just don't. I don't know if I can sit there and code and try to be creative and use that brain space to try to get things right and talk at the same time. I can do the little challenges and talk at the same time because they're pretty simple little challenges. But when you're getting into bigger stuff where you're, dealing with the HTML, CSS, and you got to fine tune, plus you got to write content and stuff like that, I really don't think y'all want to hear me mumbling while I go through that. So when I build these different projects, I'll probably just come back and post a video for maybe each little project. But I am going to still try to do the 25 minutes every day while building these projects, and we'll see how many days it takes before we get it done. So let's just go ahead and I'll quit bumbling and stumbling here into the microphone and just go ahead and let's get started. So we start the tomato timer. There we go. I'm gonna run into this first challenge here. Create flexible layouts using autofill. Okay, the repeat function comes with an option called autofill. This allows you to automatically insert as many rows or columns of your desired size as possible, depending on the size of the container. You can create flexible layouts when combining autofill with min-max like this. That's interesting. So autofill, min-max. When the container changes sizes, this setup keeps inserting 60 pixel columns and stretching them until it can insert another one. Note, if your container can't fit all items in one row, it'll move down to a new one. So that'd be pretty good for like a gallery or something on your page. In the first grid, use autofill with repeat to fill the grid with columns that have a minimum width of 60 pixels and a maximum of 1 fraction or 1 FR. Then resize the preview to see autofill in action. So you got two containers here. They're both the same thing. They both have display grid. This one, container 2, has repeat 3, min-max 60 pixels, 1 FR. So on this one, you're always going to have 3 columns, right? No matter how far you stretch it out or squeeze it in. But I think on this one, I'm just brainstorming here. What's going to happen is as you squeeze it in, you'll have stuff jump down in the next row. So let's try this. Grid, template columns. We're going to do repeats. We're going to do autofill. All right, so we just fill out autofill here. Autofill. Okay, there you go. You can see that it, squeeze it down, then you see them start jumping down. Okay. And the minimum size they'll be is 60 pixels. So if you squeeze them down past 60 pixels, and the container is not big enough, they'll jump down to the next row. And they'll stretch out until they're 1 FR, but they won't stretch out any further than that. This is interesting. I think I figured they would stretch like this until they filled the whole space, the whole time, but I guess not. I guess they just kind of stay over to the left there. It's pretty interesting. Read this bottom here. The container class should have a grid template columns property with repeat and autofill that will fill the grid with columns that have a minimum width of 60 pixels and a maximum 1FR. Okay, so, but what I don't understand is if they're 1FR, 1FR, 1FR for the columns, like, wouldn't they keep growing like these? Like, wouldn't this keep growing? I don't understand why it's not working that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, the way I imagined it work would be like if you had it here and they were stretched out, and then you could squeeze them down until they got to 60 pixels, and then they would jump down to the next row. But maybe I'm wrong on that. So, well, this should pass. All right. Let's go to the next challenge. Autofit works almost identically to autofill. The only difference is that when the container size exceeds the size of all items combined, autofill keeps inserting empty rows or columns, pushes items to your side. Okay, so that was what was happening before. Is it's inserting new columns, so you keep getting more and more columns, more columns, more columns. That's why it's not stretching out like this is. This is contained to 3 columns, and this is, you know, could be 100 columns depending how far you stretch it out. Okay, that answered my question from the last part. While AutoFit collapses those empty rows or containers and stretches your items to fit the size of the container. That's what I was wondering. If your container can't fit all items in one row, then it moves them down to a new one. In the second grid, use AutoFit with repeat to fill the grid with columns to have a minimum width of 60 and then 1FR, a maximum. Then resize the preview to see the difference. Okay, that's cool. This is what I was wondering. So there's an AutoFit. I don't remember learning about this before on grid. So AutoFit, they should stretch out, right? Yeah, there we go. So that's what I was going to imagine what happened, was that they were going to continue to stretch out to fill the container. Okay, and then they had a minimum before they started jumping down. Okay, that's cool. It makes things responsive. I like that. All right, so this should pass. Very nice. AutoFit and autofill. I'm going to have to remember that. All right, use media queries to create responsive layouts. CSS Grid can be an easy way to make your site more responsive by using media queries to rearrange grid areas. Change the dimensions of a grid and rearrange the placement of items. In this preview, when the viewport width is 300 pixels or more, the number of columns changes from 1 to 2. The advertisement then occupies the left column completely. When the viewport is 400 pixels or more, make the header area occupy the top row completely and the footer occupy the bottom row completely. Viewport is greater than 400 pixels. So at 300 pixels, it jumps to this. So here's your media query at 300 pixels. So that's the whole media query right there. 300 pixels. The grid template columns go auto 1FR. Grid template rows go auto 1FR auto. Interesting. Auto 1FR auto. Auto 1FR. These continue to spread out. I'm speaking aloud while thinking, and it probably doesn't make much sense on your end if you're watching this, but I'm trying to figure out, trying to grok this. So 300, it's auto 1FR auto. So when it's not 300, when it's this, it's 1 column, 1FR, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. 50 pixels, auto, which is just the content size, 1FR, and then auto down here. Okay. Grid gap's 10 pixels. And then you got header, advert, content, footer, and then here you got advert, header, advert, content, advert, footer. So we're going to create another one right at 400 pixels. All right, let's see if we can do this. At media, min width 400 pixels. Okay, we're going to target the container class. Grid template columns. Is this going to be one column? No, it's going to be two columns. Grid template columns. Probably don't need to put that in there, do I? Because it's just going to carry over from the 300 pixels. But then the rows would be, let's see, they got auto. And I don't think the rows would, do we just need to change the grid template areas? Let's try that and see if that works. Grid template areas. We're going to do tab over. It's going to be header. Template areas. I can't remember exactly in my head how template areas works. Oh, it's right here. Okay. So it was already in here. Let's take this code out. Up already. So here you got template areas, advert header, advert. So you do only need the template header areas. So advert header. So this is just going to be header, right? Header. And then this is going to be footer, header, over, under. Shout out to anybody who's seen Airplane. There we go. So as you can see, there's a breakpoint. That makes sense. You only change in the grid template areas. You're not changing your columns, which is pretty cool. It makes it pretty easy. I like that. Back when I first started learning CSS and HTML, you know, in the ancient times of coding, you had to use floats and stuff, and that was floats and clear and all that fun stuff that before technology gave us CSS Grid and CSS Flexbox. But yeah, I'm thankful for it, grateful for it. So if you're ever wondering how responsive layouts can work, you got this. Makes it a lot easier on people doing front-end work. So let's run the test and it should pass. Are we 100%? Nope. We got another challenge. Create grids within grids. Turning an element into a grid only affects the behavior of its direct descendants. So by turning a direct descendant into a grid, you have a grid within a grid. It is gridception. For example, by setting the display and grid template columns property of an element with item 3 class, you create a grid within a grid. Okay, so if item 3 is a grid, what's that? We got item 3 is this pale turquoise area right here. Turn the element item in 3 class into a grid with 2 columns with the width of auto and 1FR using display and grid template columns. Okay, so item 3 is going to be display grid. Went away. So we're going to add columns in here. Grid template columns. Going to be auto. Oh wait, there's no comma in there, right? 1FR. Go. So it turned it into a grid, but you don't see it because there's no content in it. It's interesting. So okay, I got it. This is where it was throwing me off because I was looking at item 1. Item 1 is paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 that are within item 3. So these are now the items that are within item 3. Item 1 and item 2 are within item 3, but they're spelled out. Maybe they should have used different wording in this challenge. Be a little confusing. Grid area header, grid area advert. I need to remember when using grid template areas that they need a grid area in the actual items that are inside the grid. That can be easily forgotten. So, alright, that makes sense. So grid within a grid, gridception. Run the test. There we go, we're done. So now we are on the challenges. So we got build a tribute page. Let's see. So build a CodePen IO app that is functionally similar to this. Go to CodePen IO. Alright, so here they have like a test suite to make sure you run all these what are they called? User stories. That's it. User stories. So all these have to pass. You have to have an ID of main with the It contains all other elements, and then you need the ID with title, which contains a string, describes the subject of the tribute page. You should see a div, the image div. Image div should have an image element with an ID image. Image div element, I should see an element with corresponding image caption that contains textual content showing the image in image div. I should see an element with a corresponding ID tribute info, which contains textual content describing the subject of the tribute page. I should see an A element, which is an anchor element, a link with a corresponding ID tribute link, which links to an outside site that contains information about your subject of the tribute page. You must give your attribute target and set it to blank in order to open your link in a new tab. The image element should responsively resize relative to the width of its parent element without exceeding its original size. The image element should be centered within its parent element. You can build this project by forking this pin. So you would fork this pin, and I kind of learned CodePen. I've messed around with CodePen a little bit, but I'm gonna have to sign up on here, and I think you could do all the coding within CodePen. Like this is you're viewing the full page view, but like if you go to editor view, you can see the actual code in HTML and CSS. So that's pretty cool. And then this right here is test suite. Let's go back to here. It says fork this pin. Fork this pin. Okay. Okay, so it's got a script in here that runs this, so you can run the test. And I think, yeah, so you got tribute page, personal portfolio, all that stuff in here. Let's close that. We'll fork that, and then we'll code all this in CodePen, and then we'll take a look at it after I am done. All right, what's the next project after this one? Let's take a look. Survey form. So take a look at the survey form. And this has its own user story. So survey form is going to be, okay, so it's like a web form like this. So it's basically building a form. Free Code Camp survey form. Okay. And then the next one is product landing page. Similar to this. Okay. Handcrafted homemade masterpieces. Oh, it's trombone. They sell trombones. Okay. Pretty cool. So, like, just looking at this, this is probably, you got a nav bar up here. It's probably all set up on grid. This is probably a grid right here within the grid. This is another grid. Columns in it, and buttons. And then down here you got a footer with different stuff. Okay, so that seems to make sense. Sorry if you weren't hearing me there. I'm not sure my mic was picking me up talking. I was kind of talking away from the mic. What's next? Let's see. Technical documentation page. Let's take a look at this. Yeah, that's interesting. It's all text. And so clicking on here, it looks like anchor tags. So this is one page. And then over here you got a column which is just anchor tags. So it moves to a certain place. So yeah, it just seems like it's a bunch of anchor tags. So that seems like it'd be pretty easy. And then last one, personal portfolio. Okay, so we're gonna build a portfolio page similar to this. Okay, well, I guess I don't have enough memory to open that portfolio page. There we go. I am Mimic, a web developer. So you have various sections here with different colors, which is pretty cool. Together, ooh, I like this little animation where they kind of bounce down. Pretty cool on hover. Got the changes in backgrounds. Oops. Once again, my computer is Acting the fool. Not enough memory. Definitely have a memory leak on this computer. I think it's the browser. But yeah, hopefully I'm still recording. But we'll see. I don't know. Maybe it stopped recording. I do not know. But yeah, we'll leave it there because I don't think I'm coming back from this one. So because it just seems the CodePen just crashed it. Let's see. Yeah, it's not even wanting to close CodePen. But if it's still recording, yeah, we'll see you after I'm done with the tribute page. Even though this wasn't a true 25 minutes, I am going to stop this, and then I'm gonna work on setting up CodePen for the next 7 minutes or so, and get started working on that tribute page. So I appreciate it.